Welcome to the Boxing Source Podcast, where we go over the latest news in boxing and react to all of the fights that happened in the past week. Now, let's go to our host, J.R. Bell. Yo, mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We should be on, we should be live, we should be good here in this edition of the Boxing Source Podcast. That is right, we are here for Sunday, December 21st, 2025. What's happening? All right, I'm checking here on camera one, and then you got camera two over here, and all that type of stuff as far as like going live and everything like that. Big thanks for everyone that's checking in here live for this edition of the Boxing Source Podcast. Hit the like button if you're on YouTube, or if you're supporting through any of these podcast apps, which will be available for here later on down the line. Also, hit the share button here to support the Boxing Source. I mean, we're winding down. We got a couple of events left here in 2025. Okay, we got one thing that's going down for Riyadh season coming up on Saturday here that we're gonna see if we could touch on here in a little bit. But we're still kind of like recovering from what happened on Friday night. Yeah, we're recovering from what happened on Friday night. You know what? Guess what? You know what? I had the thing live or whatever it was when I had the fight going down on Netflix live, and guess what? Guess what? I'm doing it again. I'm watching it again. I'm watching it again. Oh man, that was some entertaining stuff here. What we pretty much saw on Friday night, man. Hey man, listen. Yeah, I did have the whole thing as far as like being under consideration as far as like going out to Miami for this, because I was planning on going to Miami when it was Jake Paul versus Tank Davis, but given that it was rescheduled, it was, so close to, the holiday season and everything like that. For this reschedule, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just hold back on that and, and just, watch this, from home. And, had the whole thing in reference to doing it live, as they say, doing it live, right? So watching it live, I mean, that it was the whole play-by-play thing. If y'all missed it, y'all can still go back. It's still available, on the YouTube channel and things like that. But going with what I just just saw here, it was something where I wasn't necessarily surprised at what happened. I kind of like had the thing where I picked the knockout or the round that it would happen. I told folks, for me, I thought it would be round three. You know, and then I also said, something about something could be up in place for round five. And we're very close to having it happen in round five, but it ended up happening in round six. Hey, shout out to those checking in live. We got the early chat going on down. Shout out to Timothy Taylor in the building. He says that Jake Paul should have fought Broner. Broner don't punch like a heavyweight. Hey, listen, man. That's an interesting name to bring up. But you know what? Damn. I'm gonna say this. Given what I've seen a few months ago, if Jake Paul would have fought Adrian Broner, that would have been even more of a solid. I'm going to get into that here a little bit later, because of course we had a few things that we talk about in reference to this fight with Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. Of course, everything that kind of like stemmed from how this took place. I talked about it. You had the whole thing originally with Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis. I mean, you seen what was happening there in the press conferences. Seen what happened there in New York City. I was there for the press conference in New York City. You see what happened in Miami for that particular one. But, there was, some buzz and anticipation for that. And then, things got closer and closer. And then all of a sudden we see that that fight wasn't going to take place. And, a lot of people were shocked at it. A lot of people were surprised about it and everything like that. But, with even with that being said, they still wanted to see about having an event in Miami. Most valuable promotions in Jake Paul. So they still wanted to have an event for the end of the year. It was just about, okay, who were you going to fight before the end of the year. And given, the name of Jake Paul, given that it was Tank Davis originally, that it was going to be like a big event. That's how we had it from last year with his fight against Mike Tyson. So they said, you know what? Let me go ahead and see if this guy is possible in Anthony Joshua. And well, I mean, Joshua was recovering from an elbow surgery, getting himself ready in camp to actually have a fight, an 8 rounder. And so he's like, well, okay, if you want to have me step in the ring with Jake Paul, cool, I'll do it. And that's how this whole thing came about, right? But no one really, kind of like felt like Jake Paul had much of a chance in this. And days leading into the fight, I had seen the whole thing with the workouts and all that type of stuff that happened. What was that on Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. Yeah, the workout on Tuesday. And when you see Anthony Joshua, they said Anthony Joshua did like a full-fledged workout, doing jump ropes, doing the whole thing with the mitts, speed, power, all that type of stuff. Was out there for a good amount of time. Sometimes he'll go out to do these workouts and only be there for like 5-10 minutes, tops or whatever it is. But for this one, he really kind of like went out there to do a full-fledged workout. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was when I saw Jake Paul and seen what he was doing in the highlights, man, I said this. I said, look, he was going to be a little bit overweight of sorts for this particular bout against Anthony Joshua, man. Why do I say that? Because I felt like he was up there in weight getting prepared for his fight against Tank Davis. Remember, there was a catch weight for that fight for Jake Paul. He had to be, I think it was 195 pounds on the day of the weigh-in, right? But of course, that fight didn't necessarily happen. And yeah, he was in camp, but something tells me that he wasn't, getting what he needed to get to in order to make around that 195 pounds. So having this fight against Anthony Joshua in the heavyweight division, no, you don't necessarily have to worry about weight, but still, I mean, I feel like, hey, if you couldn't necessarily make the weight for Tank Davis, hey, it is what it is on that. And then you put a weight restriction there on Anthony Joshua, and then guess what? Anthony Joshua was able to, make that weight there because he was on pace for doing that, in camp when he was over in Spain, right? So you had all of that stuff that was leading into all of this, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, wait, 24-foot ring? I already knew when they said it was a 24-foot ring that you're going to have Jake Paul running around or moving around the ring or all that type of stuff. I just knew that was going to happen. You know what I mean? I felt like, hey, he's going to move around, try to get away from Anthony Joshua, try to duck and dodge the punches there from Anthony Joshua for, the as long as he possibly could. That's what I was thinking, and that's what we seen there in the first round. But even then, even in the first round, you seen when they were in a clinch, pretty much like midway through the first round, that Jake Paul went down on one knee and almost took down Anthony Joshua when he was going down to the canvas. And it was like, oh man, this isn't gonna look all too good unless he ends up trying to find a way to wear down Anthony Joshua later on in the fight. But you kind of like seeing there in those first couple of rounds that was basically it. That's all, Jake Paul was doing. He was trying to just keep away from Anthony Joshua because he knew that if he was taking about a couple of punches from Anthony Joshua, it was going to be it. It was going to be a wrap. That was going to be done, right? So given those first couple rounds and doing the whole keep away thing and moving around and that type of stuff, that okay, you know what I mean? Shout out to Bull Rider here on the live chat here. He says that Jake Paul hit AJ with a few good punches. Yeah, there was a couple of times there. I don't know if it was like round 3 or round 4 where when he was within range, but you kind of like seen it that he was trying to bait AJ, right? Even with him following, trying to move around the ring and that type of stuff, he was trying to bait AJ, right? But he wasn't able to, kind of like land fully flush or fully square with the right hand while trying to, avoid Joshua, because you seen there, like in the second round, Jake Paul was still, hopping around the ring, moving around, trying to get, away from Anthony Joshua, ducked down a couple of times, with the number of the punches that Anthony Joshua was throwing, because you could see that, Joshua, he was, trying to go in there and land that right hand, right? So here we go. Man, what is going on? See, all right, I'm gonna say this here real quick, because a lot of the thing y'all probably didn't even hear much of what I was saying there. But with this whole live apparatus joint, right? For some reason, it will carry or try to pick up from another audio apparatus that I never even added on. That I never added on this thing. So it's like every time it would be random, it'll just try to pick up from my phone for an audio source. Come on, man. I'm not even using that. So why would it even do that? All right. So let's get back to this thing. I was saying there, right? Because it was a little bit of a break. You had Anthony Joshua just, trying to follow around Jake Paul and see if he could just land the jab, follow through with the right hand. But if he's not within range, then you kind of like seeing him miss a lot. You will see him miss a lot. But even with that being said, you didn't see Jake Paul like kind of make him miss and make him pay, right? So if you had that whole thing with, as they say, make him miss, make him pay, okay, maybe it would have been like a little bit of a more intriguing fight watching live over those first few rounds. But hey, it's Jake Paul at the end of the day, all right? It's still Jake Paul that, maybe, yeah, he's had about over 10 fights, whether it's against MMA guys or former athletes in basketball or whatever it is. It's still Jake Paul there, that has still a lot to learn in the boxing game. And if you're not necessarily doing that, if you're not dedicated in the gym 24/7, 365, you're going to have a couple of deficiencies when it comes to fighting live, right? And that's, one of those things there that you kind of like seeing with Jake Paul is that whether it's Anthony Joshua or anyone else, if you got it to the point where you're having your opponent missing punches, well, either you make them pay or you just continue to try to avoid those punches, thinking that you'll get your opponent to wear down. And that was a bad strategy there from Jake Paul. That was a bad strategy. All right. So, with that being said, you got what was going on in those couple of rounds there. And you kind of seen like by round 3, that strategy of moving around the ring, staying on the ropes, and trying to utilize all 24 feet of whatever the ring was there was not going to last that long. By round 3, you kind of seen all of that type of stuff not necessarily work. Because hey, I'm like basically watching the thing there with the replay, and that's the whole thing. You kind of seen Jake Paul slow down there in round 3 a little bit, as far as like moving around a lot. Sometimes he would stop in that type of thing. They said like at one point through like round 3, you only had Jake Paul throwing a total of 19 to 20 punches in comparison to Joshua at like 50. You know what I mean? Says what was we got a real quick question here. Why would Netflix put up 180 million for Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua? 180 million or whatever it is when you have 300 million subscribers worldwide. Okay? And you got two I wouldn't necessarily say polarizing figures, but you would have two popular figures in a sense with Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. One coming from the US, another coming from the UK. You want to have as many eyes as possible looking at this particular event because you're investing a certain amount of money to have people be interested in the event, whether they're an actual subscriber or they want to go ahead and subscribe therefore that particular event. Okay. Now, I was saying here that, hey, I'm looking at, the basically the fight here once again. And when I go up to Netflix and I chose the thing there for Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, that thing was rated at number 3 overall. Number 3 for like TV, not sports, not, boxing or sports or contact sports or anything. Number 3 overall in Netflix. So that is something like that is what they're aiming for with Netflix as far as like getting people to watch the event, getting people to tune into Netflix. It's all about the eyes. It doesn't necessarily have to be the quality of the product. As long as they have people interested, that's what they're looking at. You know what I mean? Says Bull Rider has, would you take 180 million for a broken jaw? Hey, listen, man. Hospital bills ain't gonna cost $180 million, bro. I'll be right there. Hey, listen, I'll be like, hey, I'll grit my teeth. I'll try to figure out something, and I'll be like, I won't have my eyes like be real big, but I'll stay there and I'll take that right hand or whatever it is in 10-ounce gloves or something because hey, 180 million is 180 million in reference to that. Now, of course, there's a whole lot of stuff that I ain't gonna be doing for no $180 million. That's a fact. All right. But to take a punch there from two-time under unified heavyweight champion of the world for 180 million, yeah, I'll be able to arrange that. You know what I'm saying? Oh man. But going back to the thing there as far as like what was going on in the fight, you've seen a whole lot of movement there from Jake Paul, and that was pretty much like his strategy there for this. You know what I mean? So I was thinking with him having that type of strategy, how is that going to work? But the thing about it is that if you have a guy in like Anthony Joshua that just moves like 1, 2, and maybe hops in and hops out a little bit, and not really use that much energy as far as like movement is concerned, then how much can that really work for you if you're trying to move around in a 24-foot ring and your opponent is not really moving that much with you? One, and then number two, he's not really exerting a lot of energy. Like he'll, throw a punch or throw like a 1-2, but it's not like he's throwing a 1-2-3, or he's not trying to, overexert himself with the punches, like, or trying to, really hurt you, that type of thing, right? So I was thinking like that strategy, yeah, it might, have the fight go longer than maybe people expect, but you're not gonna get the result that you're going to get against a fighter that's been through 12 rounds, on multiple occasions, against world class fighters. Like for example, in his fight, years ago against Joseph Parker, that fight went 12 rounds. You know what I mean? So if you're gonna have something like that, or the fight, the rematch against Andy Ruiz Jr., that went 12 rounds. So you're going up against a guy that has had multiple fights going 12 rounds, and yet you're trying to say, hey, if I move around the ring a lot, then hey, maybe that's gonna get him tired, especially when you done already like had Anthony Joshua try to get down to a certain weight. So unless if Anthony Joshua was like starting off like camp at like, I don't know, freaking 265 or 270 and had to get down to 245 or whatever it is, then that little strategy there from Jake Paul, nah, that ain't working. Charles Z. Pacino in the building. Salute to you tuning in live here to the Boxing Source podcast. But you talk about this whole thing with Jake Paul just trying to use that strategy. By round 4, oh boy, that was like the whole thing there, man. Round 4, you kind of like seeing a lot more clinching there from Jake Paul. And you can't necessarily have that happen when you're going up a guy against a guy that's much larger than you as far and having the a movement that he has because you kind of like see there like within round four that you see that all right the movement is kind of getting a little bit little bit diminished there from Jake Paul and you're seeing a lot more clinching. You know what I mean? So you have all of that type of stuff that's going on. He's still, trying to move around and things like that, but you still have the point where, okay, yeah, you see that, all right, he isn't going to be able to do that much there, and you see like, and I'm like I said, I'm looking at it like you see, you don't have the technique there from Jake Paul as far as like being able to hit and be sharp with punches, especially like even with a counter. You don't even see that there with Jake Paul. And at one point in the fourth round, he tried to land that overhand right, and not only did it miss the overhand right, but he ended up slipping and going down. And I talked about that whole thing with the ring in the live when I was doing the live of going through this fight because there was a lot of points where people were slipping and sliding in that ring. Timothy Taylor asked the question: does Canelo regret not taking the Jake Paul fight for an easy 100 million? Well, I don't know because there could still be a chance that Canelo could have a fight with Jake Paul. I mean, it's not like Canelo took a whole lot of damage there as far as like physical damage in his bout against Terence Crawford, but he still had the whole thing with the injury that he had to have surgery for and that type of stuff. So yeah, he's going to be out for an extended period of time, and given the whole thing with what happened with Terence Crawford announcing his retirement. If you ain't gonna have Terence Crawford to fight in 2026, what else would be the most lucrative fight for Canelo Alvarez next year? A fight with Jake Paul. That's one. The only other option, at least to me, and I said this days ago, if there's any chance that he fights David Benavidez next year, and I just don't see that happening. All right, so you still have that, in possibility as Canelo fighting Jake Paul next year, as long as we see what happens here with Jake Paul, because we all saw this end result in his fight against Anthony Joshua, right? So with what was going down there in round four, right? You kind of seen Jake Paul get a little bit tired, and the more that you had the whole thing with the clinching going on, the more you seen Jake Paul like go down to the canvas, and it just seemed like he was just extremely tired at that point, right? So then you get into like round five, and and I'm telling you, it was more like exhaustion than anything else when it came to what was happening there in like round five and all that type of stuff. Because you've seen a whole lot of slipping and sliding, and the fighters like going to the canvas after clinches and that type of stuff, right? So when you see those when you see those knockdowns first within round five, right? Um, that kind of like showed you, okay, I'm not necessarily ready to go through these multiple rounds with a world class heavyweight or whatever it is, right? So then you get to round five, and I kind of like see this here as far as like the knockdowns that were going down in round five. Now in round six, I'll get to that whole thing in round six, right? But and you see, like Jake was trying it in like round six, and then you seen that he was having those issues as far as like his knee and stuff like that. That's why I was talking about the whole thing was a slip. So in that first joint where he got knocked down, it wasn't really like much of anything where he got seriously hurt. It was more about him having the problems with the knee and slipping and sliding, right? So you get into that, and then before the end of that fifth round was more of the same thing. You feel me? So even with Jake Paul trying, he was still trying to land that right hand and all that type of stuff. But hey, you seen there once again, like even with that the second knockdown in the fifth round, right? It wasn't really much of something where Anthony Joshua like really hit him with a serious shot, you know. It was something where he kind of like landed a right hand and then another punch, but nothing to really hurt Jake Paul like that, right? So you go from that and having that thing end in the fifth round, and then in the sixth round, oh my goodness, man, you had. I'm still like going over that part of the sixth round with that first knockdown because I swear, man, I swear Joshua didn't even hit the man and he went down. That was like the funniest thing I saw, right? Because I'm like, Joshua like threw the right hand and it like went behind. See, I'm looking at it right now. Yo, I swear, yo, come on, man. Yo, he didn't hit him, dog. Yo, you go through that whole replay. Y'all can watch it as many times as you want there. Within those first 30 seconds of the sixth round. Anthony Joshua didn't hit him with that right hand, bro. Go on, man. That was just funny. That was just funny when that happened, yo. Oh my goodness. And then of course the whole thing with the end result having, Jake Paul in the corner and the pretty much like in the quarter or whatever it was, right? And was able to, land that right hand to, kind of like finish him. You know what I mean? And that's what it was. Well, pretty much like in the neutral corner right there. You know what I mean? So that was the thing. Setting the trap there, like Anthony Joshua setting the trap. Going down. With the left to the body, and then just finishing off with the right. You know what I mean? So there it is. Just finishing them off right there in that corner. It said Timothy Taylor says, "I don't think boxing commissions in the United States will ever approve for Jake Paul to fight a current top boxer." Yeah, like here's the thing, right? Because remember, I'll go back to last year, right? Remember last year, they had the whole thing as far as like Jake Paul and Mike Tyson and having the boxing commissions like approve those fights. And that was like one of the bigger stories was that, okay, what state athletic commission was going to actually approve a fight between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, with Mike Tyson being almost 60 years old. So Texas, had, a whole thing or whatnot, where they said, okay, we'll have this happen and whatnot. And then a lot of people felt like that particular fight was kind of, as they say, scripted. But still, it ended up as an official result. You know what I mean? Here, you kind of like had the same thing when it came to the originally scheduled bout between Jake Paul and Tank Davis. Remember, that fight was supposed to be in Atlanta, State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia didn't necessarily say, "Hey, okay, we'll approve this fight, ready to go." They were like, "I don't know about all that." Okay, so that's why that when it was originally scheduled to be in November, it ended up being in the Casilla Center in Miami, Florida, because the Florida State Athletic Commission, pretty approved the fight. So that got scrapped, and then they still had this, and again, when you have a lot of money tied into an event, sometimes there's a few things that can happen that usually don't happen in other places. I'll just put it like that. So when you see this whole thing going down with Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, and you seen that Jake Paul ended up having a broken jaw for fighting a guy like at Anthony Joshua, then I don't know how they'll be able to properly have these type of fights, particularly when you have someone like a Jake Paul that yes he does give you that attention, but at the same time, are you going to approve him against a guy of a Anthony Joshua level from this point forward? Even when we're talking about potentially having Jake Paul facing Canelo Alvarez in 2026, how would that be? How would that work? You know, are these state athletic commissions still gonna be like, yeah, even though Anthony Joshua broke the jaw of Jake Paul, is he? Are they still going to approve or properly approve Jake Paul to fight someone like a Canelo Alvarez? I don't know. I don't know. But like we were saying, with how much money is behind these events, we saw what happened there with Netflix and Canelo versus Crawford. We see here with Netflix with Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua getting as many views as it is. I mean, I don't know what the exact figures are, but like I mentioned before, with me going on Netflix here right now, going into like the main menu and seeing Jake versus Joshua, and it's showing like number three, rated at number three in TV shows overall. That should tell you something. You know what I mean? That should tell you something. So with that being said, right, that's what we got going on. I wanted to see something here because I think I was trying to see if people could jump on the hotline or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? So let's see if we could get that going. I don't know if I have that uh, hotline number on here. So if anyone wanted to go ahead and call in. We can see if I'll be able to get a call in number here. So let me see here what's going on. Yeah. So let me see here. I'm gonna try to add in the call in number, and if anyone wants to chime in on what happened there in that fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, then you'll be able to do that. So yeah, what we're gonna do is we'll be able to get that set up here in just a minute. Y'all can call in at, as they say, 571-449-7217. That is the hotline number. All right, so you'll be able to, if you want to chime in and react to what happened there between Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul, and what you kind of like seen there, you could call in there at 571-449-7217. Now, given this whole thing with the result that happened, it's like, okay, Anthony Joshua wins, gets a knockout. We had a whole thing as far as like a live reaction. Shout out to, of course, one of my contributors here with the Boxing Source podcast, the Boxing Academic. He, pretty much like felt like it shouldn't have even been that close. It shouldn't have taken that long. It should have happened within 1 or 2 rounds or whatever it was. But I'm like, at the same time, you didn't necessarily see that happen with Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. That went, the full 8 rounds or whatever it was. You had, also with Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou, he kind of like set him up and knocked out Francis Ngannou, there within a couple of rounds. So you did have that went down. He said, hey, seems like, shout out to the topic. He says, seems like AJ's stock jumped tremendously in the American market after this fight. Very interesting point there. Shout out to the topic on that, right? That's the other part of this whole thing, having this event, okay, was that how are they going to present Anthony Joshua to the public? And that's the other thing about having that originally scheduled bout with Jake Paul and Tank Davis is that, okay, you might have that possibility of having Tank Davis be introduced or kind of like shown to people that aren't necessarily familiar with boxing. So with that being out of the way, with that fight being canceled, now you enter in Anthony Joshua in the picture. Yes, he's had a fight in the U.S. They're over at the Madison Square Garden in New York City against Andy Ruiz Jr. But now you bring him back and you have him in a fight that is on a platform that has over 300 million subscribers and able to have a moment like that. Now it's like, okay, let's see what what the response is on Saturday, on Sunday, on Monday, and going forward when it comes to this whole thing with Anthony Joshua. You know what I mean? And given what he was talking about after the fight, saying that, hey, he might, say Tyson Fury, we don't know. And right on time, we have this question here. Does Joshua knocking out Jake Paul increase or decrease interest for Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury? Listen, I've kind of like had word that the fight had been in development, that they're working on it for 2026 over the past, what was that, like over a month ago when I heard that. Now, having Anthony Joshua be in this event here with Jake Paul, him having that knockout over Jake Paul, it makes it even bigger from an international perspective. Now, if you have this fight with Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury next year, it gets even more interest. then having, as I've said for years, that particular event would have UK in a standstill, or England in a standstill. Now you have it to the point where, okay, not only everybody in England will be tuned in, but you're gonna have multiple people within countries outside of UK or England that will be interested in that fight. So the amount of, I would say, financial investment towards that event goes up, by a pretty good margin. I would say, maybe about like 10% or so. Y'all talk about the whole thing with the guarantees that each of these fighters got, maybe like 90 million or whatever it is. Now remember, Tyson Fury was paid what, 100 million or so for his fights against Alexander Usyk. How much do you think that they may invest in this particular fight between these two guys? And guess what? There ain't even gonna be any titles involved in that. So, hey, listen. Sorry, WBC, WBO, IBF, WBA, Ring Magazine. Y'all ain't gonna have any titles involved in this, so y'all won't even get a piece of your percentage of the proceeds for that fight when that fight happens. And it's gonna happen in Wembley Stadium. It's gotta happen in Wembley Stadium. No other place. You don't want it in no Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. We don't want it in no Dubai. We don't want it in the US. No. Wembley Stadium. That's it. That's all. Just pack the house. It don't even matter how much the ticket prices are for that particular fight. That thing is gonna sell out. You feel me? So that's what we got on that. I gotta see if I could share something real quick because I gotta hit up somebody that had called me about the fight, and that's the other thing too, right? Is that with the amount of interest that this fight had, that's crazy. It's crazy. Like I said, folks, will either talk about it or they talk to me about it or something like that. But when I see that, people that I hadn't necessarily communicated with in a while talking about this fight, that should tell you how big that thing was with Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. That's absolutely insane there, at least for me. You feel me? So my thing is, when it comes to the event in general, like there's been some people that have heavily criticized the event and saying, "Oh, this is a black eye for boxing. Oh, this is the bad move for boxing. Having someone like a Jake Paul being able to come in here and fight someone that is a two-time unified heavyweight champion of the world, and we can't even get anywhere close to that interest in, like, as they say, actual fights." Listen, at the end of the day, people are talking about it. So is it more about having the big fights or having fights that people talk about? Is this not much different than years ago when we had Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor? Is it that fight was an absolute mismatch, or is it the fact that people were talking about it and people were watching it? What happened? Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor got what, over 4 million pay-per-view buys for that, almost as much as what, Mayweather versus Pacquiao. So now you got here, fast forward to 2025, you got a Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, and like I said, when you have it to be trending there on Netflix, then that shows you how successful it was. You know what I mean? Bull Rider asked, "Do you think these fights make Floyd Mayweather jealous?" Um, Listen, you know what? My thing is this. You see, I was able to do the thing. I was able to do, exhibitions. I, you know what? I even fought Logan Paul in an exhibition over in Miami, and I was able to get money. And now we you know what? 2026, we got to do something. I see this. I gotta fight Mike Tyson. I gotta fight him. I don't care if it's exhibition or real fight. I gotta fight him because I can't let this dude do this. I'm TBE. Okay, I'm TBE. Nah, but the thing about it is like you have what's going down with all of these fights that kind of like generate a lot of interest. And it'll be a couple of days before we get the actual numbers of the viewership for this fight. Now you're gonna probably see it from Netflix or Most Valuable Promotions or whatever it is when it comes to the overall viewership. But when you have like that many people either watching it or talking about it, then that just tells you that okay, this guy Jake Paul is able to bring in interest regardless. I mean, given where he started from, he's from that social media era, so he's used that whole thing with PR and all that type of stuff to get into boxing 5 years ago. What was that? Yeah, he said 5 years ago when he had his, like, as they say, pro debut, right? So you go from that to having I wouldn't necessarily say like a calendar year, but just over a calendar year where you're facing Mike Tyson, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and Anthony Joshua in 3 fights. Actual sanctioned fights. 3 sanctioned fights. Once again, Mike Tyson, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and Anthony Joshua. Come on, yo. Come on, yo. What are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean that just tells you like we got a whole lot of interest from outside the boxing sphere where you don't necessarily get that unless if it's, as they say, a super fight with someone that may be involved outside of the boxing game. And that's the thing about it, right? Like people are saying like boxing is a niche sport. Yeah, we can say that. So with that being said, what do they have to do in order to get interest from people that don't necessarily watch boxing all the time or even like say like once a month? You have to get yourself viewed outside of the boxing sphere, right? And if you're not necessarily doing that, then you got other ways to do it. You know what I mean? See if I bring in a guest here to be able to talk boxing with me here. Hopefully, the chef is able to tune in and get the audio thing going because I want to hear from the chef. Here, brother Terrell Thomas in the building. What's going on, chef?
Hey, what's going on, my guy? You good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, even before today, I just thought about how will we properly discuss what just happened this weekend. My mind's still blown about it. So let's get back to it.
Yeah, man. I'm still, like I said, I was entertained. I was entertained by it. That part there in round six in the first round, the first part of round six, within like 30 seconds or whatever it was, right? And I said it here earlier. I was like, when Anthony Joshua like threw that right hand, I was like, yo, he didn't even hit he didn't even hit Jake Paul though, and he still went down to the canvas. You know what I'm saying? So that like had me, had me laughing. And then with that being said too, right? That right hand that sent Jake Paul to the canvas for good and breaking his jaw, that was pretty much like I guess a moment that people were looking for. So that's kind of what I've seen there from this is that okay, one, are you going to have that moment from this fight, either Jake Paul scoring an upset or Anthony Joshua knocking out Jake Paul? And you pretty much did get that. Did Jake Paul get flattened? No, but he still got it to a point where he's seriously hurt and got a broken jaw, on that front. You know what I mean?
Well, so let me back up a little bit more. So we have both been watching boxing for a long number of years. We've seen all kind of matches, mismatches, right? And we've seen all kind of things in boxing that shouldn't appear. I think probably one of the most ludicrous times in boxing that we've seen is back to the Butterbean days, right? And we
Right.
know Butterbean was a 6 foot, 350 pound boxer that
Yeah,
looked like
yeah,
that looked like the character on the video game.
yeah.
And yeah, and
What
just
you feel like King Hippo or something?
yeah. What's that character's name on the video game? The one of the original boxing video games.
King Hippo. Remember
Yeah,
King Hippo?
yeah, yeah, yeah. and that was the character in real life with Butterbean, and we seen him match up with so many different boxers that were just outclassed. I won't say outclassed. Let me take that back. They were definitely not outclassed. They were just outweighed in the ring
Word,
by
word.
100 plus pounds at most, some things like that. So that
Mhm.
was that's just an example of some of the most ludicrous things that we've seen in the ring. And then we fast forward to this, right?
Yeah.
We know Josh is a former world champion, two-time, I think, two-time world champion, I believe. He's been in countless wars with the top echelon of boxers and heavyweights in this era, right? And you throw in Jake Paul. I'm still I'm still trying to process this, right? Because we see those two in the ring, right? And you see that Jake is definitely what he is, a YouTuber, right? He doesn't look anything like a boxer at all. Um, comes in at, well, compared to Joshua, diminutive to what, 215 pounds, right? But no muscle tone. Just he does look like a boxer. And Friday night he wasn't. He wasn't. He's just a YouTuber in the ring with a former world champion. We saw exactly what we saw. I mean, so aside from that, so the fight first started, and of course, he stayed on his horse, pretty much for the first 2, 3, 4 rounds, right?
Mhm.
Was very reluctant to exchange, and we see
Right.
why.
Right.
we,
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
and even I'm gonna push that to the side and stop right there and just talk about the betting aspect, because that's betting is now a big part of sports these days, right? Um, I didn't get to see a breakdown, but I think how many rounds would Joshua last? I mean, I'm sorry, Jake Paul
Oh,
last,
yeah.
things like that, and
Yeah.
all that stuff was going on, and it kind of looked apparent, right? Because I think you are exactly, you said if Joshua doesn't blow him out in one round, something's wrong. I think you had said that
No,
maybe.
that was Matt, because I never like I said, I never would pick like one round in this. I thought it would have been like two or three, and I kind of like put it at 3 rounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because I just didn't feel like they were gonna have this in that quickly. And then leading into the week of the fight, and then hearing that it was gonna be a 24-foot ring, I was like, I know that Jake Paul is gonna do his best to run around the ring and try to avoid Anthony Joshua as much as he possibly could. So I didn't get it to the point where it was going to be one round. I thought it was just going to be two or three, and that's why you had the whole thing with the over under being at 2.5 rounds. I was like, yeah, that kind of sounds about right as far as like going into the bout, what the over under would be at. It wasn't going to be like something like a 1.5. They weren't going to do that. So that's why I kind of like had it at like Joshua at either like round three. And then, just before I was saying that maybe round five looked pretty good because of the odds for a KO in round five. So that's kind of like how I looked at it.
and then there are reports also that there's a lot of late money coming for Jake Paul to win the fight by decision. Like what? So
Yeah.
it's just a lot of shenanigans going on outside of the ring with the betting, and so I'm telling you, I don't know exactly who or how, but a lot of people made money from him running around that ring and surviving until the sixth round. I guarantee you. I guarantee
Yeah,
you.
yeah. The thing was, I had when I looked at it, as far as like the odds for like DraftKings or whatever it was, as far for the round result, with my prediction at like round three, that was like at plus 450, but at round five, it was like plus 1,000. That's why I was like, that looked interesting there, like with the round five. So I was like, maybe you want to put in a little towards round five. And listen, man, I apologize to my guy, G, because I had told him about it, and you seen what happened there in round five, and it was so close for the fight to end in round five that people could have hit on that one, but it was like, nah, they kind of extended it out for one more round, and then you seen how tired that Jake Paul was in the beginning of round six, so it's like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and end this joint, right here.
Yeah, and
Typically. Yeah.
And not to mention, how many times, and what's very typical of, I would say 95% of the matches that we do see, the first round or two, the fights are, it's a fill out round.
Mhm.
Seeing out what to do is, it's like maybe a low punch output from both sides like that. But Joshua didn't commit to anything. He didn't try to effectively cut off the ring. So, and by round two, the same thing. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Stop. And what do we all say? Don't play with your food. But not the fact that Jake was in near, that Jake Paul could even hurt him. But we say it all the time: do not play with your food in the ring, right? So,
Yeah.
like once again, with Paul just on his horse, I was like, and Jake, Josh just kind of just following around and working up a sweat, things like that. I'm like, man, what? And I smell bullshit at first, but we finally got to a little action, and just even another side note, the meme video with was a throwback for Martin versus Hearns.
Yeah. Yeah.
We saw that in real life.
Yep. You basically did like boom. You know what I mean? And then it had out like it was. I think it was originally Andre Berta where I saw the post, but you know they kind of like show like what Jake Paul was looking like within like first 3 or 4 rounds, and then they showed a little portion of the video of Usher sliding in to hug that chick in the music video, man. So that was like really funny on that part, but you like everyone knew that you don't necessarily have to like he had no business in the ring with Anthony Joshua. But I was saying that leading into this bout and leading into this event in general, that this was, to me, just being honest with y'all, this was kind of like a solid, because you're basically salvaging an event for Jake Paul for him not having to fight against Tank Davis, because that fight and how much was going to be like invested in the fight is a lot of money. So it's like, okay, I don't have that event anymore. Now what do I do in order to get enough interest from the public and from Netflix that says, hey, man, this is going to be something to be interested in? Bring in Anthony Joshua. There you go.
And Jake Paul got a reported 92 million. Is that right?
It said reported like 90 million for this. Now, I mean, if you get 90 million for this event, hey, like I said, I want to see the numbers for this. I don't know if it's gonna reach like, Paul versus Tyson numbers that was over 50 million or 60 million. But given that, it did have that type of international thing added to it with Anthony Joshua, maybe you could get around those numbers. You know what I mean? But we'll see here in the next couple of days what those numbers look like.
Yeah, I think it breaks down to roughly like, I think somebody showed me 18 million per round, which is insane work. Insane.
Yeah. I mean, I said earlier that, in this podcast, man, when I go back to the whole thing for Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua on Netflix, and I see there on the home screen that they said that it was rated at number 3 overall, as far as like the views. So I'm like, man, like if you got that as far as like the ratings is concerned, then that should tell you like how many people were interested in it initially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and one more point of view too. Remember when Jake Paul was I'm trying to think, maybe about 6 or 7 fights in, and he started to call out Canelo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's like I said, about 6 or 7 fights in for Jake Paul. And when he started to do that, everyone's like, no, no, no. And even Canelo said, there's no way in the world I'm going to fight a YouTuber, right?
Right.
And for obvious reasons, he's a YouTuber. He's not a real boxer. And plus, it does nothing for me and would probably even make me look worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we fast forward to Joshua, former world champion, outclass, outsize, out everything on Paul, right? And
Right.
not and of course he went in and did what he had to do, what was expected, right? Is there any shame on Joshua for this? Any like when Paul called out Canelo years ago, everyone said the same thing. There's no way he belongs. He can do that, and it would be a bad thing for Canelo. So with Joshua, is there any bad press for him for doing that?
there's bad press for him doing that as far as like criticism is concerned from people that you know had that expectation of him to like take out Jake Paul within one round. You know, I did mention the whole thing with the boxing academic from after the fight took place is that he said like there's no way that Anthony Joshua should have had Jake Paul last in the ring as long as he did. But like I was saying, one, I never really expected it to end within one round because one, you had the whole thing with the ring, and two, Anthony Joshua doesn't necessarily do that regardless. So he's more of a guy that like is a patient person in the ring, waits for what his opponent does, and then just pounces on him when he sees an opening. And he's not going to be like aggressive and just try to get at you from round one. No, he never really approached his fights like that. So I didn't think that he was going to end it within like round one, potentially by round two. But again, with the ring being as large as it was, so to speak, you were gonna see Jake Paul, run around the ring as much as he can. And I was saying before the fight, he was just going to see what Jake Paul is going to do before finishing him. And I brought up the whole thing as far as like the example of Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. Like Conor McGregor did not belong in the ring with a Floyd Mayweather Jr., but you kind of seen that, hey, you know what? I'm gonna, make this fight, look as good as it could possibly look. Make it look like Conor McGregor has a chance. And then once, I go into I don't even say second gear, like one and a half. Once I go into one and a half, I'm gonna finish them. And that's the same thing that you've seen here. It's not like you really seen much of an effort from Anthony Joshua like that. But once he just said, you know what, let me just lock in, and then I got him. And even then, given that Jake Paul was so tired, he didn't really have to do that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and just even on my own question, as a supreme boxing fan, I'm not ashamed of what Anthony Joshua did. For me, it doesn't tarnish his resume or career at all. To me, it's just another blip. Expensive. He got a lot of money for that blip. I'm sure. I'm not sure how much he got. Probably I'm guessing uppers of 20 million. But from a fan perspective, it was a crazy mismatch. But like I said, I don't shame him for doing that. So it's an opportunity that came up and it happened, and now it's over. I mean, you're always going to have your haters, and I'm sure you're going to get to post fight and even outside people like what Fury had to say about it too, which is crazy.
Yeah, and you know that Anthony Joshua had his comments about Tyson Fury afterwards, and we kind of like talked about it here earlier in this podcast that all signs lead towards a fight between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury in 2026. So you're gonna have the post from Tyson Fury, and Joshua said, "Hey, if you're willing to put down your Twitter fingers and put on some gloves and have a fight, then I'm ready to go, so to speak." Right? So um, like I said, I mean, I have to see if, like, for example, with this being on Netflix, this Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, would they be interested in having Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury on Netflix? If that could be a potential thing that happens. So, we'll see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. Not sure how Eddie Hearn feels about that. But I mean, bottom line. Well, let me ask you a quick question. Would you rather see it on Netflix, or would you rather see that in a React card? And the reason why I bring them into it, we know that Fury has had quite a few fights with them for Riyadh season, right? And that's something that Turkey will probably want himself want to put on and have that type of fight on his platform as well. So, which one would you rather see it on?
You got to be on Netflix. You got to. You're looking at an audience of over 300 million subscribers like initially, right? And you already have it to the point where people are paying for that, for it to be on there, right? So it's like, hey, either have it on Netflix or try to have it on as its own pay-per-view where people are paying like $49.95 or $38.95 if you're in the UK or that type of thing, where it's like, okay, would these people in the UK be interested in it? Sure, but that's going to happen regardless. But if you have it like on a DAZN pay-per-view, then you're limiting how many people could potentially see it because, of course, DAZN don't even have anywhere near the level of subscribers that the Netflix does. And especially in the US. So that that definitely ain't gonna work out for them. So if they're smart, so to speak, or if they say, hey, what would be the best option for this? I would try to have it on Netflix and just say, you know what, put it on Netflix, put the advertisements on there, and have people like say, oh man, this is gonna be on Netflix. Oh yeah, that way it's like, hey, if you're a subscriber, you watch it, you'll be able to watch it for free. This is not gonna be like a thing on the Zone pay-per-view or even like an Amazon Prime pay-per-view. No, you just go to Netflix and there it is. It's right there for you. So why not have it on Netflix?
If they did put that on Netflix, they would be compelled to put on a real card as well. Now it's like bullshit fights with like what was it, Anderson Silva versus
Anderson
Woodley.
Silva versus
I'm not even
Anderson
sure why
Silva
they had
versus
that part of this card anyway. For what?
yeah, versus Tyron Woodley, and I think it was added on to this overall card for this time around. But yeah, that was kind of like a crazy look on that front. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if that kind of worked out for them as far as like getting viewership from what is it, like Brazil or wherever Silva is from. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I'm like, what do you get from that? Take and then remember that fight between Gary Antoine Russell and Andy Hirioka was taken out, from the card with this thing being rescheduled. So that was another thing that had me disappointed was that Gary Antoine Russell and Andy Hirioka there weren't on this fight card. You know what I mean? So when you had the whole and I'm like, wait a minute. So you have that off the card, and you have Jamal Harvey on there against Kevin Cervantes on the main card. I thought that right there was really surprising to me, though. Just on that real quick. You
Who
have
won the fight? Who won the fight?
huh?
Who won that fight? I didn't get to see it.
Jamal Harvey won by a unanimous decision.
Okay,
Good performance. Thought he was going to be able to, get a knockout, but he looked really good there in that second professional fight in a 6 rounder against
Mhm.
Kevin Cervantes. When you have multiple fighters that are under most valuable promotions that have been featured on most valuable promotion cards, but wasn't necessarily on that part there for Netflix, which I thought was pretty surprising.
Also, that's a small note too. Look back at Jake Paul's first event on Netflix when everyone tuned in. All the what's the word? It was the quality of the broadcast was horrible.
Yeah,
So it looks like they fixed all that now. That's good. That's
yeah,
behind.
yeah. Because but that that was the other thing too was with what's happening with Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. That thing on Netflix that you had a number of those instances where you had freezes or delays or that type of stuff. This one, you didn't necessarily had that thing on there. Yeah, he said another clown had a fight yesterday. Andrew Tate, and he lost. He lost. But I did see their it was like on what was that, like Rumble pay-per-view or Rumble Premium or something like that. And by the time I looked at it, as far as like, if you click on the link to view the video if you wanted to, at that point, as of what, a couple of hours ago, it had over 3 million views. So whether you like them or you don't like them, they were able to get 3 million views off of that particular link for that whole fight card there with the Misfits or whatever it was. But Andrew Tate lost it. Hey, it is what it is on that one. I was like I was saying there with the entire card, right? You had, as I mentioned there, Jamal Harvey versus Kevin Cervantes was on there. You had the thing there with Anderson Silva versus Tyron Woodley. Then you had there in the co-feature bout Alicia Baumgartner versus Layla Badoin, and the main event there with Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, right? But you had the first fight that I mentioned there with Jamal Harvey and Kevin Cervantes. Harvey looked like a really, really polished fighter here within his second pro fight, and it was a 6 rounder against an undefeated fighter in Kevin Cervantes. Then you had the whole thing with Anderson Silva and Tyron Woodley, and Tyron Woodley gets knocked out once again. There pretty much got hit with an uppercut by Anderson Silva from a fake. He did a fake and then threw an uppercut, and landed an uppercut, and Tyron Woodley went down and got up, but the referee ended up stopping the bout. You know what I mean? So that was kind of like what you seen there. And then the thing with Alicia Baumgartner and Layla Badoin, I'm gonna be real with y'all. I said this when they were making this a 12-round bout and 3 minutes per round, that it was gonna go the whole 12 rounds. Did Alicia look pretty good in there? Much better than her last fight, but I just still knew that it was going to be 12 rounds. So yeah, that I mean, I have a few things to say about that, but I'm going to try to see if we get another one of our guests, our great panelists on here checking in. The Boxing Academic is in the building. What's going on?
What's going on, fellas? How you doing tonight, JR? How you doing tonight, Terrell?
Yo.
What's good with you, man? What's good with you?
Oh yeah, man. Just made it back in town. Went home and under not great circumstances, but made it back in town and just ready to chill. And I know we talked a little bit about the fight yesterday, so I
Yeah.
just wanted to get on to make sure I can chat it up with y'all.
Yeah, for sure, man. Good that you at least you're back at home, you're safe and everything like that. So if we got you here ready to go now, you had one of those great rants, so to speak. Immediately after the fight result there between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua here, and we were able to talk about it a little bit as far as like what the ramifications are for like Joshua going into 2026 and with Jake Paul going into 2026. So is there like anything else that you would add as far as like what happened, Joshua breaking Jake Paul's jaw, or Jake Paul being able to just be in the ring with Anthony Joshua? What else do you have with it?
I will make some comments, but I will also say that I'm gonna watch it one more time, and then I might have different comments before I put because I like to write my own little like thing about it or whatever. So I haven't done that yet, at
All
least
right.
not on my first view. Because you're right, I did kind of rant after the fight, but I want to watch it again and synthesize. But the things that stick out to me is Jake Paul is the biggest winner of the night. He's the biggest winner. He won. I mean, yeah, he got a little physical imperfections, broken jaw. He got knocked out, but I don't think that it doesn't hinder Joshua, but it doesn't help him. And I think it hinders him more than it does help him.
How?
How? Terrell, you supposed to listen to the rant, man.
Well, no, because we just talked about that. We just posed that same question. So just directly, how's your perception of him different now after this event?
It actually it made me feel more resolved in what I already had seen from him. Joshua got his success from privilege. And, I don't know this man's exact story, but what I do know is you can see how people handle success, failure, all those things as it relates to the boxing business when they come to the business from a sense of poverty, when boxing is the only thing that sort of allowed them to sort of get out of their circumstances. You can see the difference of sort of mentality where as JR eloquently summarized, put it, Joshua has he has an option. Like if you listen to him after the fight and they asked him a question about legacy, he said he doesn't care about legacy. Like 2-time champion, one of the best heavyweights of the last like 5 or so years. In this era, he's one of the best heavyweights. Say he don't care about legacy. Even in winning, it just kind of had a distasteful sort of facade in how he wins. Like, yeah, he had a speech. It didn't even sound sincere to me when he was saying like, we got to commend Jake Paul. Like, it's just a lot of things that come off insincere. And then when you hear him talk about he doesn't care about legacy, how it hinders him is because Jake Paul was able to go how many rounds?
6.
6 rounds with him. Jake Paul for sure won 1 round. You can arguably say he won another round. I think he for sure won round 4. Depending on what you like, you could say he did or did not win round 1.
Well, somebody been smoking good.
No, nobody's smoking. Go back and watch it. Jake Paul won 1 round for sure. Arguably won the first round as well. You depending on what you like. And the reason why I say this about the first round is because there were literally no shots thrown. And Jake Paul was moving and flicking out shots. Joshua didn't really catch up to him in the first round until the end of the first round, where he landed one big shot. And the shot was so clean, so I'm like, dang, that was a good shot. And Jake Paul barely landed the shot, you know what I'm saying? And so with that one shot, it probably won the round for Joshua. But depending on what you like, it just really depends on what you like. And round 4, I don't remember the specifics. I remember that from round 1 because, I remember like going back and forth. But yeah, so like I said, so how it hinders Joshua is because the information that it sort of tells other people. I personally think Andre Ward licking his chops to fight a Joshua on a circus type of fight. I think Andre Ward would, based upon that performance, feel resolved in saying, "Hey, let's fight. Give me enough time and let's fight." Because Andre Ward can hurt Anthony Joshua, and dare I say it, when what's his name hit him one time, I think Joshua felt it. Did he succumb like he did with other people? No. But he definitely felt it. Joshua has a response where when he get hit, he gets that PTSD sort of deer in the headlights where he just freeze and stop. If you look at one of them rounds where Jake Paul landed that overhand right, if you look at that round, Joshua was stopped for a second. Then Joshua, in his mind, he had a thought, am I going to let this motherfucker do this? And then he pushed through. Even though he felt it and probably got hurt by it, he still was like, fuck this, I'm going to push through. And I think that was supported by him saying, when the guy said, did Jake Paul ever hurt you at the end of the fight? Joshua didn't really answer the question. And he said, I was not going to allow anything to hurt me. He didn't say he didn't hurt me. He said, I wasn't going to allow it to do that. Versus with other people like Usyk and, insert person, Joshua get hit and he like, his brain gone. He like his heart gone, his brain gone, all that. I think Tyson Fury seeing this, he licking his chops. I think Andre Ward would feel, he feels something like he can take him, because out of that performance, Andre Ward will implement the exact same plan. Move, throw a big shot, and he would land that shot and he would hit him. I mean, ain't nobody got time for that, yes, but Andre Ward is at least thinking about it. Tyson Fury looking at this, Tyson Fury gonna move because Joshua couldn't cut off the ring. Tyson Fury gonna move around, just pepper him. And then he gonna hit him with a shot. He gonna keep doing that. I think it's easy. That's my thoughts, man. Like I said, I need to synthesize it, and I'll get it honed in and tightened by Wednesday or something.
It's pretty much similar to what you were saying on Friday night, after the fight. The thing is that, as it was mentioned then, I didn't expect Anthony Joshua to, take out the Jake Paul in one round because of the whole circumstances behind the fight. Whether people think it might be, as they say, scripted or not, because I've never seen like Joshua be like a fast starter at any point against any opponent, regardless of the level of opponent that it is. The other thing is that as far as like being in the ring, it doesn't matter like who's over there on the opposite side of you. It is still the theater of the unexpected. So when you talk about that moment there after the fight when Ariel Helwani was talking with Anthony Joshua, and Ariel Helwani asked him, was he hurt at any point of the fight, and Joshua gave his answer. Like, he's just giving an answer. It's not like it's something that he's trying to come up with the best answer, or he's trying to quote unquote manufacture it. One thing that you can't do, and I think that was the other thing he kind of like hinted at, was he didn't want to show weakness against someone like a Jake Paul or anybody. So the thing is like he's not gonna necessarily say no, I wasn't hurt at all, but at the same time, you're like, how do I make this to the point where I give respect to the person that stepped in the ring with me, which is pretty much the key thing that Joshua was talking about. He was saying he's giving credit for Jake Paul to actually step in the ring with him, But at the end of the day, we got to see what this means for Anthony Joshua in the ring. Now, the thing with Andre Ward, no, like I said, there's no shot whatsoever that Andre Ward steps in the ring with Anthony Joshua in any capacity. I just don't see that happening. What we do see happening is Anthony Joshua going up against Tyson Fury, and if Tyson Fury is like inclined to have that fight against Anthony Joshua, is he going to be at the point where he would be able to, as you say, probably style on Anthony Joshua? We'll have to wait and see. But remember, this is also the same Tyson Fury that actually hasn't had a fight in 2025. His last fight was a rematch against Alexander Usyk last year. So he has a significant time that he's been out of the ring and not fighting anybody. So I would like to see where Tyson Fury is at this point if he's not going to have a fight before taking on Anthony Joshua in 2026.
So let me say this about Anthony Joshua. I think Anthony Joshua fought the fight he was supposed to fight. Let him wear off some steam. Let's let it go a few rounds, and then I get him out of there. Like, don't do anything that can let the unexpected happen, which is me allow him to come in and land, as Anthony Joshua say, a shot from the gods. But I also think he was trying to hit him on the head. He was trying to hurt him at times. And what's his name? Feet slow enough, and Jake Paul's feet are okay enough. I mean, you could say he was running. You could very well say he was running, but Joshua could not cut off the ring. You can say he didn't want to cut off the ring, but I don't think he hadn't shown me the ability to do that.
Well, yeah, he definitely didn't do that at all in the first few rounds. I was like we said in the beginning, first round was just usually just a fill out round. We know that's typical in boxing, but this was not. This was the first one was not even that. Like I said, we've seen Joshua cut off the ring to the degree with other opponents, but there's no real attempt or commitment to do that with Jake Paul. It was more or less like it's, and as I said, it seemed like there was a script to the fight, right, in a sense, and Joshua just simply abiding by the script per se, like that.
And that's why I was saying with the whole strategy is like I've seen him from Jake Paul what he was going to do. So I'm like, you know what? If he's going to do that, let him do that. Let's see how long he's going to be able to do that. And I'm thinking that's the approach there from Anthony Joshua. So, and even in the first round, when he was doing it at like the midway point, you're already seeing Jake Paul like go down to the canvas because it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try this, but how long is it going to work? It didn't really work all too much because if you seen there during the fight, there was a number of times where he was slipping, he was like falling and sliding, and he had that moment there where he did, like I said, I felt like he hurt his knee in what was that, like round 3 or round 4. And then after that, you kind of like seem like, all right, it's time to end this. You feel me? So I just feel like it was something to where you have it to the point where it's entertaining. Because I was entertained. I'm gonna tell you, I was entertained, right?
yeah.
I was too. It was
So
entertaining.
so it was entertaining. So you have it to the point where it's like, okay, yeah, you don't want to play with your food, but at the same time, hey, you actually gonna really do something to me? Nah, but let's just have it extend like go out as long as it possibly can, and then when it's time for me to wrap it up, I'm gonna wrap it up. You know what I mean? So that's what I kind of like got from it. Um, I was gonna try to find a comment that I had because I had sent something to like Antonio Tarver when he was talking about the bout before it was happening, and I said, you know what? He's gonna carry him as far as he wants before stopping him. That's what I said. He's gonna carry him for as long as he wants until you're stopping it. He says, shout out to Gorgaruga here. He says 13 takedown attempts in the fight. Oh man.
What it said? Face growing, smiling. What it said?
No, it's a thing there for the emoji, on YouTube. So it doesn't
Okay.
necessarily go show up here on the live apparatus that I have there. But he also asked, does Jake Paul go the distance with Tyson Fury like Ngannou did? I don't know.
No, no.
Like he shouldn't. He shouldn't. But Bull Rider asked, Joshua versus Andy Ruiz 3. Listen, we haven't seen Andy Ruiz since, man, I don't even know, man. Listen, we were supposed to have Andy Ruiz Jr. versus Deontay Wilder last year. And what happened with all that? You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, but I don't think that would kind of like be a fight that happens like between the Joshua versus Fury fight, because I think Joshua versus Fury probably won't happen until like September of next year. So you would have to see about what Joshua could do in between that. I would say, hey, you had a 8-round bout that you were planning on having against like a Cassius Chaney or one of these other heavyweights before getting this opportunity with Jake Paul. Why not have another one of those 8-round bouts if you wanted to still do that? And then at the same token, let's have Tyson Fury do that, since he, as I said, he hasn't been in the ring since those 2 fights with Alexander Usyk in 2024. So I say, why not have that in order to build up the fight? Now, Box Academic, you weren't on here, but I was talking about this, or Terrell had the question, right? If you have the fight with Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, should it be on like the DAZN, like a DAZN pay-per-view, or should it be on Netflix? What do you think?
So free on Netflix or a DAZN pay-per-view?
There you go.
What I think they will do versus what I think let me say, I don't know, because
Okay.
in terms of purses, paying fighters, things like that, does Netflix equate to being able to, balance out with that stuff? And my gut feeling is no.
Well, they
That's a question.
they definitely had the money, but like you just said, do they have the commitment to do that? Does that bring subscribers and people to watch for a full box event with no circus matches like that?
I mean, if you're gonna have that whole thing with 90 million for this fight with Jake Paul, I gotta
Yeah,
see.
but they probably get a lot of eyes. They probably got a lot of eyes. The subscriber base is a lot smaller with the zone. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would say the zone, because it's hard to know how much money like really is made and that will sort of tell you what's the answer
Yeah.
as far as Netflix is concerned. Because I mean, you got to pay both of these guys.
Yep.
Joshua gonna get paid more, but
Yeah.
Really? Who gets paid more in the Joshua Fury match? Who gets paid more?
who has historically got paid more?
That's kind of tough because both these guys have
Joshua.
been in the top fights. Fury made a ton of money fighting Wilder, and Fury's made a ton of money in Riyadh season on top of that. So who's the A side?
Yeah. So that's why I think it's going to be like even. But,
Okay.
I think, with like I said, with Tyson Fury getting paid $100 million for fights against Alexander Usyk, it would
Oh, he
reach
got paid
him.
$100 million?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So, like, if he goes up against Anthony Joshua, that has to like easily touch around 150 million or whatever it is. So, I'm like, why not have that at 150 million for both fighters? So you could have like a fight that has $300 million or so behind both of those fighters in that potential matchup. So, that's what I kind of like get with that. But yeah, I know with Joshua being on Netflix, and I was saying there earlier that it was within the top 10 of TV shows when it pretty much like when it happened, right? Now, given what the rankings from last week, you had like shows or series like Stranger Things or Man versus Baby or the Sean Combs documentary. So being able to be within the top 3 for TV shows within a couple of days, that's kind of like pretty good there for this event. You know what I mean? I was saying also the stuff in reference to the undercard. Any thoughts on the undercard or anything that you kind of like seen from that?
Man, yeah. I was told if you don't have anything positive to say, don't say anything at all. I think we could have done without the undercard.
And it could have been something where you could have just had the fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua.
And people would have been satisfied. I don't know. Yeah. Like I get the idea, equality, everything. We talk about being equal. We should strive for that. At the same time, if it gives us more action to have 2-minute rounds, why deprive the fans of more action? Because it's, men can dunk in basketball and, all that time, it's just a lot more flair going on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if they lowered the goals, it would look a little different with women's, but the game is just a little slower. Not to say they, don't deserve the same opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the same sort of thing with women's boxing. The pace is a little bit slower outside of like Clarissa Shields. Even then, her style is amateurish if you were related to a man. And when I say amateurish, what I mean is she throws more shots. Like, yeah, she started sitting down more since she came to heavyweight, women's heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, her style was just throwing more shots. It wasn't, like a pro men style, which lends itself more to knockouts.
In reference to sharpness and that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, we're referring to this thing here with Alicia Baumgartner in her bout against Layla Baduin, and as I was saying early in the show, I knew, regardless of what it was or whatnot, that it was going to go to full 12 rounds. I just knew that. You know what I mean? I just knew it. Okay, and the thing is like as you say, they try to promote the thing there with the quality and things like that when it comes to having these 12 rounds and 3 minutes per round and that type of stuff. But at the same token, does it kind of take away from what could happen within the rounds, or so to speak, or if anything has to happen as far as like strategy is concerned? Because even with me, like going through that live on Friday, I said, listen, You go through 6 rounds at 3 minutes per round. That's already like 18 minutes of ring time. Compare that to how they usually have it at 10 rounds for championship fights and 2 minutes per round. That's 20 minutes of ring time. So within just those first 6 rounds that happened, that was just halfway through that fight. You would have already had that fight done pretty much from that time. So I'm like, if you have it at 2 minutes per round and have it at round like 6 or 8 or 10 rounds, then you have to like really step it up if you're in a bout that is like evenly matched or whatever it is. So I say like for women, like having it be 2 minute rounds and 10 per round, I would keep it that way. I've seen multiple fights that have been like really, really good fights that are just 2 minutes per round over the course of the years. So why change it? Like why?
Yeah,
Maybe adding 12 rounds, is the change that could happen.
Maybe yeah, and just still have it 2 minute rounds. Yeah,
and I think you said from a pure standpoint, 10 rounds, 2 minute per rounds. That's the best for women's fight. Like I said, it compels your opponents to fight even harder to win that round, knowing that there's less time and less rounds in that regard. I mean, I'm not a men are men and women are women. It is what it is, right? And women, and I'm not saying nothing bad at all, but women, they just can't not physically do what men can do. That's just it is what it is. I know there's been some fights. I think Serrano, who wanted to fight for 3 minute rounds, things like that, right?
Katie Taylor. Yep.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, but those are the outliers right there. But every woman is not capable of doing that. And once again, nothing negative about women, but they're not men, and we are physically and inherently different. And that it is what it is. So and like I said,
I'm
when you think
offended.
about, you'll be all right. Yeah, but when you think about the product for your fans and wanting to bring in fans to and watching a big event, you don't want them become complacent. Like, man, when is this going to be over? I guarantee you, there's a lot of people that probably went away from the TV and think while Baumgartner was fighting. As a side note, I'm lobbying for us to have more Alicia Baumgartner content in our chat group instead of the other person. She's a,
Hey, stop snitching. Stop snitching.
she's she's much more easier on the eyes, dog. She
Yeah,
is. Come on
okay,
now.
all right. We have the request. We'll be able to do something with that request.
But I will say in the fight, at least early, she did look decent. Like the parts I was
Yeah,
watching, she looked good.
yeah.
And if you did change bouts to 3 minutes, it would be a stark separation between the women who are like dogs versus everybody else.
Hmm.
And Clarissa Shields seemed to me she get tired in fights. So her style obviously would change. She wouldn't have the more amateurish style. She would change her style, but it would be a stark difference between the cream of the crop and then everybody else. So it would only be a couple people who excel that in that way, and then everybody else is just it's just gonna make it even more of
More apparent.
a
Yeah,
divide. Yeah,
yeah.
more apparent of the divide.
But the thing about it is too, and bringing the points that both of y'all brought up in like comparison with like like say men's sports and women's sports, so to speak, right? There's like a couple of reasons why they have the rules that they have set for women's sports the way that they do, right? And it's there in boxing, right? And a lot of people like would bring up just being just real with it, NBA and WNBA, right? And we all know about, some or a good number of people know about what's going on with the WNBA at this current juncture over the past year and a half, and what they're trying to do. But at the same token, is that you got to have it to the point where this is still, at the end of the day, a business. Okay. And when it's a business, you have to do, cost benefit analysis on that, so to speak, right? So if you want to have, like in this whole thing with women's boxing, if you want to have the thing there with 3 minute rounds or 12 rounds and that type of stuff, and I said this, earlier this week, and I've brought it up before. When you have it like that, you also have to consider the whole thing with the pay scale, because that has to change. Just it is what it is. It will have to change because you're going to be in the ring, potentially longer than you usually are. So if you do have it like that, it's like, okay, if you want to get paid a certain amount for being involved in these type of fights, then we got to see if it benefits there, if we're going to be able to make money on that. And given that, to me, I'm not sure if that's going to, reflect or properly reflect on there. So you have to deal with that from a business perspective. And then from an action perspective, I've been saying it before, like I'd rather have it to the point where it's 2 minute rounds for them, because it makes for a lot more exciting fights. Hey, I'll give just a real example right there. The second fight between Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, that was last year. That was the co-feature to Paul versus Tyson. Like 50, what is it? Up to 50 million people were able to watch that fight and see how much action there was in that particular bout. So you get all of that that's happening, then yeah, you'll be kind of like interested to seeing these fighters in their next fight, whether it's another rematch, which they ended up having, or if they, ended up fighting somebody else. They're like, okay, I saw, Amanda Serrano have those rounds against Katie Taylor in that rematch, or Katie Taylor being able to have the win in the rematch. So I'm, going to be tuned in. At the same token, you have something going on with like a Alicia Baumgartner, who goes like 12 rounds, and it's like, okay, will that be able to generate that interest for her to be involved in other matchups in the future that wouldn't necessarily involve Caroline Dubois, which is the suggestion that a number of people that, follow the sport say, hey, we just signed Caroline Dubois on Most Valuable Promotions. She was added on this card here on Friday, and is there in the lightweight division with a WBC title, if I'm not mistaken. So you're going to have who was the undisputed champion there at super featherweight in Alicia Baumgartner and Caroline Dubois, and both of them going, at it, in the press conference leading into those fights. That's probably the thing there that's kind of like happening in the near future. But would it be for in a 12, like a 12 round bout for 3 minutes per round? I don't know about all that.
So you said this, but I'm gonna say it in a different way.
All right.
The bottom line is, will it generate more money? Them fighting more rounds and more time in the rounds, will it generate more money?
No.
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 So in terms of like the point that you said, with more fighting time in the ring, yes, it should equate to more money. But if you don't make any money, or you make substantially less money, then the argument to say parity is not there. If you got a Fortune 100 company and you a $40 billion company, and then another company is a $1 million company, to say that, I don't know. It's hard to justify
Yeah,
when your outcomes are billions versus millions.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one thing to, have it to the point where you're investing a certain amount of money towards it. But the thing is like, how much are you willing to sacrifice in order to, I guess, forward the sport, as they say, them, potentially doing that. So I'm not, all too certain about it, at least right now. I don't think, just me personally, I don't think it's a, great idea to, have that be happening on a consistent basis. Yeah, we did see there in reference to this particular bout between Baumgartner and Bedouin that the World Boxing Council wasn't necessarily, cool with it. So they didn't, approve to have the WBC belt on the line for that fight. But at the same token, like if they feel like they could do this, all right. But like I was saying, at the end of the day, if it's not generating the money or the numbers or the interest that y'all are looking for, then you won't be able to continue to do that there on that front.
And the biggest issue, let me say one last thing. The biggest issue with implementing that, bouts are just gonna get more mundane, more than they already are. Because the talent, like if you had a lot of density of superb fighters, then yes, the product would improve, ideally. But the fact that there is such a wide range of skill sets where you just have one or two of exceptional people, and the odds of them two exceptional people fighting, yeah, okay, maybe they fight one time, but then the rest of the fights they got to fight the other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be, the mismatch will still be prevalent, and it's gonna be more boring fights because they can spread it out, they can take their time, they can conserve energy. You don't
Mm-hmm.
promote the amateur style because you promote, by sheer coincidence of just timing, you promote a more study paced, fight.
Bird.
So yeah, I mean, the boxing talent divide will make it even more apparent that the fights should be 2 minutes.
Right. And I'll go with this here before I kind of close out on the card itself, right? As I mentioned, from people like, yeah, I cover events and things like that and go out to events, but being at my advanced stage, as I as I sometimes say, right, the longer I'm there, the more agitated I'll probably be because you just want, fights to kind of like, flow in a good little spot where you get to see, fight after fight after fight, right? So with this particular event, of course, you had the 4 fights that were on, that main thing there through Netflix, but you also had, fights that were, on there through YouTube and that type of stuff, right? Regardless of, how many rounds or whatever it is for it. So I'm looking at this thing here as far as like how many bouts were there. Shout out to L Dub in the building, man. What's good with you? I'm gonna see here if I could do this here, man. Let's see. All right, yeah, this should be able to do it. So I'm going to, for those that's watching live, I'm going to be able to show it here. You should be able to see it. It's here. Shout out to Box Rec here with the thing there, right? So you see there, of course, can see it center Miami, Florida, in the bout, pretty much the bout sheet there for Most Valuable Promotions card. All right, let's see how many bouts we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 fights, right? Out of those 9 fights, 3 of them ended in a knockout. So six of those 9 fights went through the full scheduled rounds that they did. So you kind of see like, okay, if you don't necessarily have it to the point where you're getting stoppage victories or whatever it is, you're going through a number of rounds that's happening with these fights, right? So it could be a little bit of a marathon, so to speak, with the number of fights that happen on these fight cards. And you want to have it to the point, especially with it being a contact sport or combat sports, as they say, where these fans are looking for knockouts, so to speak. So that's one of the things there that we kind of see on that, right? All right. So we're able to close with that. We have like a couple of things that's on schedule for next weekend. One of them is the Riyadh season event that's going to involve Naoya Inoue defending his titles against David Allen Picasso and Junto Nakatani stepping into the super bantamweight division against Sebastian Hernandez. That's kind of like the focus there because they pretty much like announced that Naoya Inoue and Junto Nakatani will fight next year around May 3rd, I think it was next year there for the super fight. As long as they have these fights and take care of business, they're on December 27th, excuse me, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, we know that you have Inoue as the undisputed super bantamweight champion, and you have there with Jutsu Nakatani being a world champion at bantamweight, now moving to super bantamweight in order to set up this fight. I'm like looking at this like this would be the super fight in Japan between Inoue and Nakatani, and something that would say like, hey, if there was like any way that I could try to go to it, I would try, because those are like the events that would kind of like make boxing be at like next level of interest when it comes to sports and that type of thing there. But that's what we got, at least coming up here next week. And with Naoya Inoue and Junto Nakatani, I do like have them listed in the pound for pound rankings. Now, I hadn't necessarily updated those rankings since November 24th. Was gonna see here if I'll be able to share that here real quick. I mean, there is a thing there for the Boxing Source pound for pound rankings, and you do have there at Terence Crawford being at number one, Alexander Usyk at number two, Naoya Inoue at number three, and Bam Rodriguez at number four. But with Terence Crawford announcing his retirement, who would be shown as the number one pound for pound fighter? Now, that could be decided after Saturday if you do have Inoue having an impressive performance against Picasso. Shout out to Bull Rider Game Farm. He says that Inoue versus Picasso is going to be a barn burner. We're going to see. You have Picasso there undefeated. Where was I at? Was I able to see one of his? I thought I was able to see one of his fights, but nah, he fought in July of this year at the MGM Grand. So he's been waiting for that world title shot against Naoya Inoue. Now he gets it. But I think a number of people still highly favor Naoya Inoue in that bout. You know what I mean? But that's a list here so far. Would people kind of like put Naoya Inoue at number one pound for pound after this, or like who would be considered among the top there? You do have Bam Rodriguez, you do have Usyk. Usyk had just one fight this year, so that's what we kind of like have there here at this point, given that Terence Crawford is retired. So, any thoughts on like pound for pound rankings here? Who y'all may have there as pound for pound top?
Well, I think it's a natural ascension that he goes up to number one. I think one of the main reasons, for one, he does have the skills to pay the bills. We know that.
Mhm.
But anyway, it's fought. This is going to be his fourth fight this year, right?
Nah, it should be his second, because he had his fight against Ramon Cardenas in May of this year over in well, actually it's third. It's third, excuse me, because he did fight MJ. I forgot about that MJ fight that happened after Canelo versus Crawford. So yeah, he fought MJ and Cardenas. Hold up.
It's four. He's fought four times.
Damn. You know why? You know why? Because I forgot about that damn fight that he had in January against Ye-Ju Kim. Like, he shouldn't even had that freaking fight. Well, come on, man. That fight shouldn't have been approved, man. Come on, man. That because I forgot he had I think that was like a replacement opponent. But yeah, he fought Ye-Ju Kim in January. God damn, he fought four times this year.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
So and in this era, it's rare to see our top fighters fighting more than twice a year.
More
He's
than
got
twice.
his,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, not now aside from that, yeah, he's definitely number one. I mean, we all love Usyk, what he's done. We know that, but with the activity and the dominance that anyway continues to show, yeah, he's definitely number one. And aside from that, too, also for the fight coming up for next weekend, right? Is the anyway fight the main event, and
Yep.
also Nakatani is at the sporting event to it.
Yeah, there should be the supporting event to it, because it's like what they have it at Night of the Samurai is what they're theming this event here for Ring 5. Ring 5, Night of the Samurai. And you're gonna have Inoue there against David Picasso and Junto Nakatani against Sebastian Hernandez. You had one fight that was canceled because of I think it was Jazza Dickens got injured or something like that, but he was supposed to defend his title, but they had an injury in that one there. But you're gonna have Kenshiro Taraji also involved in that too, the fight card. But those are the Inoue and Junto Nakatani fights are the two main fights that people are gonna be considering. Ooh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Bull Rider says, I sense an upset with Inoue losing. Whoa. Man, I don't know, man. Like I said, I have to look at Picasso in his last few fights, but he's kind of like been waiting for this opportunity against Naoya Inoue, and yeah, Inoue did have these instances where he's been knocked down in his fights, but
What's Picasso's record?
32 wins, 0 losses, and 1 draw, with 17 wins by way of knockout.
So he does have some power.
Yes, he does have some power. He is there listed at 5'8" with a reach of 70, and you got Naoya Inoue there at 5'5" with a reach of 67.5. But I mean, Inoue's fought taller guys before multiple times anyway. But we'll have to see where Inoue is at this particular juncture of his career. So that's going to be interesting to see if you do have Picasso having a good showing there against Inoue.
I think Usyk is number one.
So you got Usyk at 1.
If Terence Crawford retired, then Usyk should be number 1.
Okay. So you wouldn't take into account Usyk just having 1 fight this year?
Terence Crawford had how many fights this year?
Okay, there you go.
And he still was number 1.
Yeah. I think, with that 1 fight that, both of those guys had this year, with Crawford having to win over Canelo Alvarez and Usyk having his knockout win over Daniel Dubois. I guess that's why, you have them there within those top 2 spots, and given what they've done over the past, couple of years, that's why they're, at their positions there from that point. So yeah, you kind of like could have it like that, I would say. So yeah, if you have Usyk at number 1, wouldn't blame anyone for that. It's just with Inoue, having 4 fights. This would be 4 fights this year. That's a lot of activity there on that front. Like any thoughts on, like Inoue? Like he did say that we'll have this fight against Picasso, and everyone's pointing to him facing Junto Nagatani potentially there in 2026. But he recently mentioned that, hey, if there was a shot that he would fight Bam Rodriguez, he would be open to fighting Bam Rodriguez too. So that would kind of like be another intriguing bout there within that whole thing with 122, 118, and 115. That would be another really intriguing fight there in those divisions. But it still remains to be seen what would happen, especially if it would take place in 2026, which some people kind of doubt that would happen.
Yeah, I think I need to do Inoue a justice, and like I watched a couple of his fights, but I need to watch more and be more critical of him. So it's easy to see that the dude is talented. Like definitely he is one of the best fighters that we have now. But the thing is the crop of people that he fighting, is it like the women's division? I don't know. This is a question. I don't know. I don't watch their fights enough to really know the answer to that. I can tell you that was the case when Ndungo fought at 140, because I watched a lot of those guys' fights, and I've watched fights against other fights and saw their level and stuff. So I don't know. So I'll never be able to honestly give an opinion in that way, because I don't know what Inoue means in respect to everybody else that he fighting.
Right.
Outside of fighting like Nonito Donaire and stuff like that, which Donaire was old. He gave him a really tough fight, the first fight. But but you should be the old guy, right?
Well, I mean, Nonito Donaire is currently at 43 years old, and I think he did have like a version of a world championship here recently, but he did lose here a few days ago against Seiya Susumi by split decision over in Japan. So even at 43 years old, he's still doing this thing and cooking. But you have those fights that Inoue had against Nonito Donaire. He had that performance that he had against Stephen Fulton. Those kind of like stand out there for Anayo Inoue. But when as you mentioned, like if you don't know much about a Marlon Tapales or TJ Doheny or MJ Akhmadaliev, then how does that count towards who you view could be the top pound for pound fighter in the sport? Now he did have a win over Ramon Cardenas earlier this year in May, and Cardenas was on in the Pro Box event here earlier this week, and he got a knockout victory too. So Cardenas is like one of those guys that maybe people could follow within the super bantamweight division. But outside of that, if you're not really following that 122 or 118 or anything like that, then you might not give someone like Anayo Inoue credit for what he's done within those divisions 115, 118, 122 in comparison to someone like, say, for example, like with the Terence Crawford, who was able to win titles at 135, 140, 147, 154, and 168. You know what I mean?
And Stephen Fulton is not doing Inoue any favors by how Stephen Fulton prepared himself, showed up in the ring, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, obviously, Inoue is much better than him. Easy to see. But Stephen Fulton is not doing him any favors in regards to the win sort of meaning something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically that Victor's not aging very well is what you're saying, right?
Based upon Stephen Fulton's output, yeah, if I was to base it off a fighter that I have seen a couple of his fights, when things are going well, Fulton, does well. But then when it's something to where he kind of got to adjust, or a taller fighter, or something that it seems like he's just not prepared for, looks very questionable.
Yeah,
But that you can't knock Inoue, because Inoue is a champion. He behaves like a champion. Like, all the stuff is there, but it's just, how do you rate him? I don't know, because I don't know enough about it. So that's all I'm saying.
now you bring up that thing there with Stephen Fulton. Before his bout against Naoya anyway, he was there as like undefeated, and he did have the loss. And then after that, he has a split decision, over Carlos Castro, where a number of people feel like he may or may not have won that fight. He did get knocked down in that fight. Then he has a rematch against Brandon Figueroa. Now, he did have a great performance against Brandon Figueroa, but then you turn around and then you approach the fight against Oshaki Foster like, okay, you're supposed to move up and challenge for a super featherweight title, but then you end up weighing, over 130 pounds, and then they have to, do some things to make it to be for a WBC interim lightweight title. Then that kind of like says, okay, what were you doing before, preparing for this fight against Oshaki Foster? So that kind of like goes to, your point about how a fighter's resume looks, when it comes to who they beat and what happens to those fighters after, said fighter beats them. You know what I mean? So it kind of like is how you look at it when it comes to these pound for pound rankings and resumes and that type of thing on that front.
I'm gonna say one thing in respect to you saying that taking a fighter's career after the fact leads me to the point that Joseph tried to say about Timothy Bradley, where he said, uh, um, what's his name? The the guy from Louisiana,
Who you mean, the fighter?
Prograis. Prograis.
Prograis.
Well, he said Prograis and Josh Taylor.
Oh, the rankings thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
top 30 and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You still ain't allowed me to stick my wrist out the window.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I know I should let it go, but it's too easy to not point out the easiness of this. But all I'm saying is, if you look at how they perform after the fact, it's easy to see how people that those guys beat perform after the fact versus people that Timothy Bradley beat. It's just no. the dude is in the Hall of Fame. Like you may not like him. He tries to be sensational, but come on now, the dude was the man outside of facing somebody like a Floyd Mayweather or a Manny Pacquiao. The dude was the man.
Hmm. I mean, that's the thing about it is that with Timothy Bradley, he had these wins against a Manny Pacquiao, or that one win against Manny Pacquiao. But when it came to like the super lightweight division, like he proved himself to be the top guy within the super lightweight division and having key wins against like a Devin Alexander or Lamont Peterson, and then afterwards having a win over Manny Pacquiao, having a win over Juan Manuel Marquez. And, as you said, that is enough for him to be in the Hall of Fame. So if you have somebody like that in comparison to, say, for example, a Regis Prograis or a Josh Taylor, who only like had those fights against each other, right? Or the one fight against each other there in the World Boxing Super Series, with Josh Taylor getting a win, close win, could have been debatable, close win nonetheless. And then after that, you have Josh Taylor having the performances that he had against, Teofimo Lopez, or what was it? He just didn't look to be like that guy, or like be at a level where he could be either like extraordinary or something where like he would stand out. You know what I mean? So
He got the belts at the right time.
yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. He got the wins. He got the belts at the right time, so to speak. You know what I mean? So him like having that win over Jose Carlos Ramirez to be undisputed at super lightweight, yeah, that was probably at the right time, for him. But other than that, since then, having those 3 consecutive losses, then that kind of like put some out as far as like what he did there in the super lightweight division. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like how that era was on that front.
Hey, question for you before we wrap up.
Yeah.
There's a fight this past weekend, and during the press conference, the one fighter called the mother's
Okay.
a B. Who was that? Who won the fight?
He called somebody mama a B. What?
Yeah. That was the whole thing with the I think it was Amado Vargas, if I'm not mistaken, right? So you have the whole thing with the Vargas kids and that type of stuff. Yeah, I think that's what it was, right? But you had, I think it was like a clash between Vargas and one of these other guys, right? And that guy like said to his mom's like, "Hey B, you should like make me a quesadilla or something like that, or something to that effect," right? And I didn't like I seen like they posted a video and that type of stuff, and I didn't feel like playing the video. I didn't feel like going through all of that, but people were still talking about that, right? And I said,
That's not cool.
Listen, there's things that you do as a fighter to kind of like hype up fights or potential fights or whatever it is. But there's other things that you should just not do. And that's one of them. Now, for me, I'm surprised that nothing happened right off the rip from that. I don't care if y'all say, hey, let's do something to boost a fight or boost a potential fight or whatever it is. Something like that, that should be off limits right off the rip. And when I talk with some folks in the gyms like out here in the DC area, and I talk with a specific trainer, have the interview posted on YouTube so y'all know who that is, and they brought it up, and he said, "Listen, if you say something like that, that should be an on-site type of thing. Like no fight. You don't see me stepping in the ring with against anybody. You say that, nah, I'm dealing with you right then and there." And that's kind of like the thing that should have happened, at least from my perspective. That's what should have happened. That type of stuff is off limits. You don't do that. You don't. Like mother, wife, significant other, that type of stuff, to me, in a sense, should be off limits. Now, I've seen it with a significant other on multiple occasions when it comes to fights. But like, parents, that type of thing, nah, that's off limits. Like you shouldn't do that ever. You know what I mean?
And it's something to say a joke about a parent and to toe the line, but to call somebody a bitch, that's
It's not just that. It was
The context.
it was calling them out their name and putting it to the point where it was like a bigot. Like some people say racist, I say bigot. So
Make me a taco.
yeah, like taco quesadilla. Like no, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah, that's not cool. That's not cool.
That's off limits. So that to me is like, nah, you would have to be dealt with on site. I'm sorry. You just can't, just say that and not have any type of repercussion for it. Nah.
So I slightly disagree because just because somebody says something does not give another person the right to sort of hit them outside a professional setting. I'm being logical.
All right.
However, I agree with you that no one should be allowed to say that without some repercussion. Like outside of the cameras and blah blah blah, do whatever you want to do, knock him out, do whatever. But I'm saying there should be the commission, somebody, higher should be like, this is intolerable, stuff like that, racist, things like that.
No, I'm
And
go back in time to Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, that press conference. What was said then?
remind me what it said.
I'm going to eat your kid.
Eat your children. But that's a sound bite. That is so different.
That's it.
No.
But look how he said it. It was deplorable.
When Larry Holmes beat up Trevor Burbick, and then they had Trevor Burbick on camera talking about Larry Holmes hit me, he did this to me, and then all of a sudden you see Larry Holmes jumping up on a car, running up on a car, and then jumping in and drop kicking him. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about. Like if you say something, I don't know if it's off limits or whatever, but you need to be like Larry Holmes. I'm sorry, you might need to be like Larry Holmes and get him right then and there. Listen, I would be like, nah, that's off limits, and you gotta, show that, hey, you can't do this ever again. That's my mentality with that.
Mike Tyson saying "I'll eat your kids" is different.
Yeah,
because it's not specific. It's more of a exclamation. It's like it's so left field.
But dog, look at how he said it. It was
Tell me what he said.
vile. It was vile. It was vile.
Tell me what he said. Tell me what
I'll say this when you talk about Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis, right? That part right there is different. I mean, it was like after a fight, he's like, my powers and touch about defense impregnable, that type of thing, right? Fast forward to the lead into the fight between Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson when they had a scuffle, right? And then afterwards, you had I don't know if it was a reporter or whatever it is that says something, and Tyson was like, I'll do this, I'll do that. I can't say it because
I think I know. It was to a lady.
That was like extremely questionable with Tyson saying it. But yeah, that's a whole different thing right there.
That's out of line. What he said to the lady was out of line.
Well, I don't know if it was a lady or whatever, but like when he said that, I was like, ooh, nah.
Well, I don't remember then if it wasn't a lady.
Yeah. But yeah, that kind of like shows like what the line of the line you ain't supposed to cross, so to speak. You know what I mean? So yeah, with that person like saying that in reference to the mother of the Vargas brothers, like that you gonna have to. At least for me, I would have been like, nah, we're gonna have to do something right then and there, man, for real. But that's what I got here, man. As far as like doing a midweek report, I'm not sure. I probably will have some type of post or whatever it is, because for the next version of the Boxing Source podcast, that it will be the 2025 Boxing Source Awards show. So if I do have a midweek report, it'll pretty much like show like the nominees for each of the categories that I will have for the Boxing Source Awards show on that front. But for this edition of the Boxing Source podcast, that kind of like brings it to a close. Shout out to the Boxing Academic. Shout out to Terrell Thomas in the building here for this edition of the Boxing Source podcast. Thank everyone that's been able to listen live and those that will be able to listen to the replay that will be available here pretty soon or whatever it is. If you're listening to the replay, hey, I'm going to be like, listen, either it'll be on, soon or a few days after, but, I'll work on trying to get those up there as soon as I possibly could. But, with that being said, that's all I got for y'all. I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.
Later.